Panel of guests here. You've got Scarra to my left, Red Baron, and Jatt to my right. Now, I think I speak for all of us when I say, first off, CLGU versus World Elite, wow.
Yeah, that was a bit of a wow game. Even the first one, it seemed like it might be a stomp. And then the second one, it seemed like it could go forever because it just kept going back and forth. I think that's how you play a team when you don't have the better late game team fight comp. Like, that's so hard to execute, but they managed to do it brilliantly.
Yeah, it really was a situation where CLGU pretty much won the vast majority of team fights, except for the very last one. They just outplayed team fights considerably. The backline had no protection, and Froggen's Lee Sin was able to assassinate Wei Zhao and Ori quite a bit, and to the point where I think Wei Zhao had the worst score he's ever had in like his last couple tournaments here.
How many deaths did he have? Like 12, I think?
Yeah, he died like 12 or 13 times this tournament. So he had an insanely negative score this game just because of how much pressure Lee Sin caused the back line. And so they knew they couldn't fight straight up 5v5, and they had Tomei do the split push, and it worked incredibly well for them. Like, executing it is always extremely hard because he was very, very close to being caught multiple times, but they were able to pull it through, go for the very, very, very late game Baron 4GA advantage, and they were able to win a team fight with putting a lot of pressure on the inhibs throughout the game.
Yeah, so the last fight was actually 4 GAs for WE and 3 for CLGEU, and it was like every time CLG would win a fight, it would be in their base. So even though the death timers were 60 seconds, they'd always have inhibitors down too. They'd have to go back, clear their super minions, and they tried so many times and could almost get away with the advantage, but they just never finished it. Like, how many times in that game was someone rezzing like 3 seconds before they needed to, and they just were able to finish it off. And even though they were getting outplayed in team fights, the position that WE was putting themselves in before all of those eventually won them the game.
I just thought it was wild. I didn't get to see it until the last 5 minutes of the game, and I walk in, and the whole room is like just in shock and awe. And like you hear coming into the last fight, with the live environment, World Elite is really loud, and they just all start screaming, and there's a slight delay. So you're like, oh my God, shit's about to go down. You know, this is about to happen. And then Rengar jumped in and 1v4, took down Cog's GA. The last fight, and then, like you said, like seeing him put some pressure on those inhibitors was absurd.
And you know, that is surprising because I know before, Scarra, you were talking about how Kog'Maw, I mean, late game, obviously, just is known for shredding absolutely everything. So the counter to that was WE's split pushing, sending Rengar down bot over and over and over, regardless of whether it failed or succeeded. He just stayed bot all day. I mean, is that the absolute right call for WE to do against a late game team like Kog'Maw?
Right, I think it was definitely the right call to make. Like, you could see throughout the game that World Elite, I think, recognized that EU could team fight better than they could. Because throughout the game, they got outplayed in team fights quite considerably. So they realized that rather than fight on CLGU's strength, they'd rather take it to a split push game, which was the right call to make. And it just took a lot of execution from them to be able to pull it off well. But they were able to pull it off, and that Rengar definitely deserves a lot of props.
I thought it was hilarious how the Zyra support build was more than most AP carries endgame item builds. It was Abyssal Scepter, Deathcap, and Zhonya's Hourglass. And you were actually mentioning that the Void Staff might have been a better call, which is probably the case. Everyone had so much late game MR that could have been a little bit of error. We even considered maybe Rengar should have built more damage since all he was doing is backdooring and trying to take turrets. But you know, overall, I would say that's safe to say that's the best League of Legends game, at least the most back and forth League of Legends game I've ever seen in my life, which is really awesome that it happened here. And it's just, I can't wait to see what happens in the rest of the tournament with WE because, you know, they're looking really strong after that.
Obviously they are. Now, they were coming into this tournament looking really strong, and this is the second time, I believe, that CLGEU and WE have faced each other, the first of which being, you know, the famous, like, 7-day match at the World Championships, and CLGEU came out on top of that. Do you think WE kind of used that as a metric and was preparing for CLGEU here, or were they just kind of playing their standard, oh, we'll see if Wei Zhao can carry, even though Game 2 kind of ruined his KDA?
I'm just happy there wasn't a DC in the last match. Like,
yes.
I think they moved away from the fact that they're using Wei Zhao to carry. They effectively executed a strategy which, in a game where Wei Zhao actually performed maybe a little bit worse than he's performed, like one of the worst games he's performed in a tournament setting. And they were able to win off that. Shows the fact that the rest of their lanes are significant threats. And that's something that teams such as like CLGNA are also known for having extremely strong AD carry, but they don't have lanes that are like as big of a threat as World Elites are. So while they may not be comparable in AD skill, their actual lane, the actual other people on the team are significantly better. So they have much better teamwork and much better team synergy.
Yeah, I'd even expand on that. During the World Finals, when Clear 11 FCZF were very new players for them, you could, when you looked at their gold, it was like Wei Zhao and Messiah would just be miles ahead of everyone else. Like, they knew they had to channel everything through those guys because they were kind of the only players they trusted. But today, they were giving all that farm to Xiaomei in the top lane on Rengar. And also, the jungle Cho'Gath at one point was 100 gold back of Messiah's gold. So Clear Love and just the rest of the team have really rose up to Wei Zhao and Messiah's level, and it's really making them a much more dynamic threat as a team. And I just really like that growth since it's only been a month since the World Championships. They were new then, they're more experienced now, and it's making them ever more threatening.
Yeah, I know we've spent a lot of time here in this kind of analytical place talking about Wei Xiao and how good he is and stuff, but you know, you still got to always talk about Messiah, Clear Love, Calmy. Everyone on the team is fantastic. Now, moving from that onto the second stream, I suppose, not on the main stage anymore, Fnatic versus CLG in A. You were calling them pretty much North America's last hope in the winner bracket. Sadly, they lost to Fnatic 1-2. Were you able to catch any of those games, Scarra?
I caught 2 of the 3 games. The first game I heard was pretty much a stomp for CLG and A. They just slow rolled 2 towers, and they were able to, or they just pushed 2 towers early, and they were able to just keep taking objectives and control the map, and they just slowly won the game. The second game, CLG and A was up, I think, 7-3, and they forced, or Fnatic was able to force team fights with Leona in positions where they can get pickoffs. And then there came to be a big Baron fight where CLG and A made 2 critical mistakes. One, they lacked the Blood Boil on their Caitlyn carry, and 2, hotshot on Shen ulted Nunu instead of the AD carry when everyone else was at 30 or 40%, and they lost a team fight 5-2, and they lost Baron off that as well, I think. And so it was the game-changing moment. They had two crucial mistakes there, and it cost them the game. And the third game, I think Red Baron can explain that a little bit better than me, because I don't think I caught a lot of that game.
Well, the third game, Fnatic looked incredible. They were putting on a lot of pressure on CLG throughout the early portion of the game. They had Lee Sin in the jungle, and Cyanide looked incredibly, or very strong. But then bot lane, I think, was the surprise for me. The fact that Reckless and N-rated, they were kind of bullying around Double Lift and Loco. So they were at the very least keeping Reckless even in lane and, you know, not allowing any advantages there. They were able to force a couple of fights. But it was really an even game through most of it. And Double Lift was actually playing Vayne. So the first 2 matches, he played Caitlyn to great extent. Third match, they kind of lost that confidence. They went to the Vayne pick because they were like, all right, if it's going to go late, you know, we'll win with Vayne. And there was this one team fight that they actually forced off the blue side. And CLG, they had just bought some items, and so they were kind of feeling confident. And they all run right through, you know, a narrow opening in the jungle and all get caught by all of the AoE from Fnatic. So Leona ult into Ezreal ult into a full channel on, you know, Katarina. Rengar jumps in and double Ws, and they all instantly are vaporized. So CLG, you know, had a really nice situation. They had a pretty strong team comp, and then it was over. You know, that one team fight, and that gave Fnatic the lead. The second game was insane, though. The first game, CLG, they were running the Caitlyn Nunu, and Big Fat and Chalster, they have such great synergy. Like, they are really working well together. So they were able to push objectives very effectively. The second game, CLG, they were running Anivia on Big Fat, and he looked really strong on Anivia. He was able to beat XPK in lane to the point where XPK went Revolver in lane. So he went with Spell Vamp against the Anivia, and there was a point where Double Lift, he bought Infinity Edge, Big Fat, he bought Unholy Grail, and they also got a Shirelia's. And so it was like they all just finished their items, and XPK, on the other hand, he only had a Revolver and a Ruby Crystal. So he's really weak at this point. He's been farming effectively, and it looks like CLG is going to be able to push this for a lead. Like, they're going to start grouping up, forcing objectives. And Fnatic did a really nice job of just, you know, picking people off back and forth, like, you know, Scarra said. And like Voyboy, Chalster, he got caught out a couple of times. He, you know, had an Oracles early on where they had complete map control and he lost it. Hotshot was caught a couple of times trying to split push. And then the one big fight by Baron, they didn't have vision because they started getting caught. So Fnatic, they got vision of the Baron. CLG had no vision. So when the Baron spawned, they panicked. And that's why they ran up. They popped Shirelia's, and Nunu Blood Boiled himself, trying to get to the Baron as fast as possible. And Fnatic was waiting for him.
Now, do you think that game or that series was a case of CLGNA misperforming in those last few games, or is Fnatic just looking that good for this whole tournament?
Well, I think one of the key things in that game is we really saw who Reckless is as an AD carry. TPA, he looked really strong as Vayne, but the rest of the team around him, they're incredible. XPK in the mid lane's very strong. So as in the CLG games, looked dominant. He was, incredible. So like their whole team is a really high-level team. But Reckless, you were like, okay, so they lost the lane with Vayne and with Reckless and N-Rated in the bot lane, but they were able to win late with that Vayne pick. What's going to happen when they don't pick the Vayne? Vayne was never banned. They just didn't pick it against CLG. I think because they were concerned of the pressure that Doublelift was going to put on that bottom lane with Caitlyn, so they didn't want to pick in that situation. But he played Ezreal, and CLG ran a defensive comp against Ezreal, which meant that he was able to get full damage, and he was just constantly peppering them with attacks. Like he had perfect positioning every single fight, and they didn't have a team that could threaten him, and it allowed him to put out a lot of damage, and the whole team really looked impressive. I think the big thing for me, though, is Reckless isn't just a Vayne player. He's not, just a lucky AD. He looked really impressive.
Of course, of course. Now, in your opinion, XPK playing that Katarina, of course, you being our kind of resident Katarina expert, you think it needs to be banned against XPK 100%?
I think the champion, I saw him, I think underperformed the second game with Katarina in lane, but he was able to bring it back through really good pickoffs and a really good team fight. So he's obviously very, very skilled at him. And like I said before, it's Katarina. You can't make mistakes against her. So against Fnatic, it might just be better to ban it off and force PK back on something like Orianna or something Orianna, something that's more controllable.
One misstep against Katarina can cost you a match. Fnatic will take that series 2-1, move on to the winners finals against the winner of that last match. We do have some more great matches coming up. M5 versus Azubu Blaze on the main stage. Thank you guys again for joining me here at IPL5 Cosmo, Las Vegas, all those things in one. We'll catch you guys in a second on the main stage. M5 versus Azubu Blaze. Stick around.